The Renault Talisman is the successor to the Laguna, which many owners remember as a very unreliable car, although the latest generation is precisely the opposite. It remains a highly regarded car to this day, but Renault, to erase the Laguna's legacy, changed the name of its successor. The history of Renault's mid-range cars since the 1990s is quite interesting, as the French have struggled with reliability in stages. The Renault 21 was replaced in 1993 by a new model called the Laguna. This car was very well made and considered to be trouble-free. Customers learned about reliability with the introduction of the new generation. The Laguna, too, has gone down in automotive history as one of the least refined cars of the 21st century. In practice, this primarily affected the then popular diesels and early facelifts. Renault made every effort to ensure the successor to the Laguna 2 was the best possible car, and it succeeded. Despite the Laguna 3 boasting features like V6 engines and four-wheel steering, it proved to be a refined car with few faults. Nevertheless, many potential customers still had memories of the Laguna 2 and rather negative opinions about it. In 2015, the French brand unveiled its successor, deciding to break away from the Laguna's history by changing the name to Renault Talisman. It was supposed to bring good luck, but as time has shown, it only brought back memories of the early Laguna 2, a high rate of malfunctions. Incidentally, the Renault brand has an unwritten tradition of every other generation of a given model being well developed and every other one failing. The same is true for the Megane, for example. As it turns out, the name change from Laguna to Talisman had no effect. The French decided to build a car entirely from scratch, with dimensions slightly exceeding the standards of the mid-size segment. Measuring 4,848 millimeters in length, the sedan was one of the largest in the D segment, larger than, among others, the Passat B8. The estate wagon was even larger. The only major change to the Talisman was 2020. First, a visual facelift, cosmetics, and new safety systems was carried out, followed by changes to the availability of some engines. However, minor changes to the powertrain lineup were introduced in 2018, primarily affecting diesels. All 1.5 DCI and 1.6 DCI units disappeared. What engines were installed? The Renault Talisman's powertrain lineup is extensive and heavily dependent on model year. From the start of production, 1.6 TCE petrol engines with 150 and 200 horsepower were offered, and in 2018, the 1.8 TCE was added, boasting the highest output in this model, 225 horsepower. That same year, the 1.6 TCE was discontinued, replaced by the smaller 1.3 TCE generating 150 horsepower. In 2021, only this engine remained in the petrol range. The diesel options initially included a 1.5 DCI with 110 horsepower as a fleet-specific option, and a more powerful 1.6 DCI, available with either a single turbocharger, 130 horsepower, or a twin turbocharger, 160 horsepower. At the turn of 2018 and 2019, these three diesel engines were discontinued, replaced by a new 1.7 DCI from the same family, with 120 horsepower and 150 horsepower, but this engine was discontinued in 2020. Also in 2018, the 2.0 DCI appeared. Actually, it returned from the Laguna 3, albeit in a refreshed form. Initially offered in 160 horsepower or 200 horsepower versions, the more powerful version was discontinued in 2020 and replaced with a 190 horsepower variant. It's worth noting that the model name includes engine power, with TCE denoting a petrol engine and DCI denoting a diesel engine. This nomenclature is somewhat confusing, as, for example, the 1.6 and 2.0 engines had the same power output, with the smaller engine being commercially called the Energy DCI and the larger one the Blue DCI. It's also good to know that the newer and larger 1.7 engine, designated Blue DCI 120, has less power than the older and smaller Energy DCI 130. It's also worth mentioning the EDC designation on the model. This is an automatic dual-clutch transmission offered with many engine variants. For example, it was standard on all gasoline models and has 7 gears. In the diesels, it's a 6-speed gearbox, offered as an option on the 110 and 130 versions and as standard on the 160, 190, and 200. Manual gearboxes always have 6 gears. Which engine to choose? Despite the extensive offerings, not all variants were particularly popular, and overall, the model itself is less popular than, for example, VW Group cars. Due to its age, the most reliable information is available for the 1.6 TCE petrol engines, but also for the 1.8 TCE. Among diesels, the 1.6 DCI was the most popular. In terms of fuel consumption, the most fuel-efficient petrol engines are the 1.3 TCE and 1.6 TCE, averaging no more than 7.5 to 8.0 liters per 100 kilometers. The 1.8 TCE requires a liter more, which is a very good result considering its power. All petrol engines are fuel-efficient thanks to modern technology such as turbocharging, direct injection, and a start and stop system. The TCE 160 and TCE 225 variants are also equipped with a gas particulate filter, GPF. The most fuel-efficient diesel engine is, of course, the least powerful, the 1.5 DCI, but only if driven as intended, meaning leisurely. The engine can then average less than 5 liters 100 kilometers. The 1.6 DCI and 1.7 DCI engines consume slightly more, around 5.5 to 6.0 liters 100 kilometers. The exception is the twin-turbo Energy 160, which consumes significantly more than 6 liters 100 kilometers. The relatively unpopular 2.0 DCI diesel consumes similar fuel to the 1.6 bi-turbo, around 6.5 to 7.0 liters per 100 kilometers. Users praise the 1.5 DCI and 2.0 DCI engines. However, the 1.7 DCI is so unpopular that there aren't many reviews. Among the diesels, the most popular, the 1.6 DCI, receives the worst reviews. Its main problems are a stretched timing chain and exhaust aftertreatment system. The small 1.5 DCI has a timing belt and is the much-praised 8-valve version, but it's also a bit underpowered for this car. It's primarily focused on economy. The 2.0 DCI, on the other hand, is a refined, rather old engine with a timing chain, and if any faults arise, they're more likely in the exhaust gas aftertreatment system and accessories than in the engine itself. It's harder to choose a better petrol version, as the 1.3 TCE's limited popularity means we don't know how it performs at the moment. The 1.6 TCE's high popularity, on the other hand, accounts for the highest number of reported faults. These range from those affecting the engine itself, high oil consumption, to its ancillary components, extremely problematic fuel and exhaust systems. Nevertheless, a significant number of users praise this engine. Among the petrol engines, no clearly faulty units have been found so far. Potentially, the best option is the 1.8 TCE, also used in sports models from the Renault RS and Alpine. In my opinion, choosing an engine should be based on your preferences and needs without paying much attention to the specific engine. The only truly risky choices in this range are the 1.6 DCI diesel and, to a lesser extent, the 1.6 TCE petrol. Potentially the safest choices are the 1.3 or 1.8 petrol and the 1.5 or 2.0 diesel. Typical faults. Unfortunately, Renault has failed in this regard, building the new model as a successor to the excellent Laguna 3. However, it's important to understand that most of the faults concern the exhaust gas aftertreatment and fuel injection systems, which are prone to failure in the Talisman, as in the Megane of the same era. If someone doesn't encounter a check exhaust system or check fuel injection system warning at least once, they're either lucky or it's just a matter of time. Unfortunately, repair shops don't handle this very well, sometimes replacing the lambda sensor, another time the DPF filter or catalytic converter, sometimes the sensor, and sometimes the fuel regulator. The result is that repairs are performed haphazardly. Some are successful, others not. Often, these are minor issues. Another very common fault is intermittent operation of the 1.6 DCI engine, which can be caused by both exhaust system contamination and a timing chain malfunction, more likely. In cars equipped with the EDC transmission, the engine jerking symptom may actually be the result of worn clutches. The EDC gearbox is another relatively high-risk area. If you're concerned about faults and costs, it's best to avoid it altogether. This means your only options are the 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7 diesel engines. Unfortunately, EDC gearbox failures can be so serious that the entire unit requires replacement, which was done under warranty or a major overhaul. Costs? Expect to spend upwards of 5,000 euros, although it can be cheaper. Another topic in the drivetrain section is dual-mass flywheels in diesel engines. In these engines, they wear out relatively quickly. The problem isn't even the price, but the availability of replacement parts. They are easy to find for 1.5 and 1.6 engines, but harder to find for other engines. The situation is even worse for gasoline engines. Not only are dual-mass flywheels more expensive than for diesels, but a clutch kit for the EDC transmission costs around 4,000 euros. It wouldn't be a complete description of the French car without the topic of faulty electronics. Users complain about slow multimedia performance, but that's the least of their worries. A more serious concern is the discharging battery, which immobilizes the car. Unfortunately, a good quality AGM battery costs nearly 1,000 euros. Discharging and a decline in this component's performance often result in warning lights appearing for no other reason, which can lead to unnecessary troubleshooting. Similarly to the Laguna 2, car access cards often fail. Opening the car in winter is often a challenge, as that's when the cards most often stop working. Sometimes the cause is a weak battery. Therefore, two things are recommended when using the Talisman: a visit to an authorized service center or a workshop specializing in this brand every year or two to check for software updates. The second thing is to charge the battery 3 or 4 times a year. Less serious issues include problems closing the power tailgate, which can be done manually. Users complain about the suspension, which creaks, usually indicating the need for shock absorbers, and frequently gains play. Some cars are equipped with adaptive shock absorbers, which are more durable but more expensive. Fortunately, the 4-control system isn't particularly unreliable, but to truly appreciate its performance, the suspension must be in very good condition. Operating costs. The car's failure rate is relatively high, and the risk of even more serious problems is quite high, meaning we're dealing with a car that doesn't guarantee reaching its destination or starting before driving. If you're traveling far from home, it's worth purchasing good roadside assistance insurance and having a handy jump starter in the trunk. Unfortunately, using random, i.e. cheap, garages can quickly backfire. On the other hand, users have limited confidence in authorized service centers. An additional high operating cost is the tire size, which for many variants was standard 245/45 R18. This means that a good quality tire costs around 600 euros. By choosing a mid-range tire, you can save around 100 euros per tire.